I'm Ryan Stevens.
Dr. Taylor Waters.
I'm Ben Oliver.
Welcome to the Superhuman Show, yeah?
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Superhuman Show with your host, Ben Oliver, joined by Ryan Stevens and Dr. Taylor Waters. We have new camera lenses, so we are back. We're back on the.
So I look all of 51.
Yeah, we're back on the YouTube, so you can see all of our blemishes, and blackheads, and lack of tan.
If they don't make us look good, fuck all.
Yeah. I think I prefer the manual focus rather than the autofocus. At least we can kind of blur our ugly faces out a little bit. But so today we wanted to discuss resistance, not the fun resistance that we normally talk about, resistance training. But resistance when you start making changes in your lifestyle, whether it's your exercise routine, your daily habits, your diet, inevitably you're going to experience some resistance from those around you. Mm-hmm. And there's some actionable things that you can do to make that transition a bit easier, to have those conversations more effectively, rather than just having to either use that resistance as a reason to not change or to just continually live with that resistance and make it really difficult for yourself to continue the habits and behaviors that you want to continue. So, one of the most common ones that we get is spouses, where the guy or gal signs up to the program, they want to make a change, and the typical resistance that they'll experience will be, you're fine just the way you are. Does this mean that we can't go on date nights anymore? Why are you eating your own meals and not what I cook you? I think sometimes there's even thoughts of, is he or she planning on leaving me? That's why they want to lose the weight.
That's a big one.
Is like this, and it comes from a place of insecurity where, well, now it's a reflection on me that they're starting to look good and I'm not doing anything, and it kind of just, the dynamic of the relationship can change. So we'll talk about this one first, because then we can talk about friends and family and things like that. But in the relationship, so first, I mean, because Ryan, you've competed, and Taylor, you've competed. Both while were you competing? Did you have a relationship when you were competing?
Yeah.
Okay, so and obviously you were married.
Yeah.
At the time. How did you navigate that? Because I use competing as an example because it's about as extreme as it gets.
Yeah, it's always easy to give examples in extremes.
You're not just giving up pizza on a Friday. You're giving up everything and saying no to everything. Yeah. If you're truly, and I'm not telling you that this is absolutely how you should compete, but with the mentality that you guys have, where you don't compete just to show up, you compete to win, and that means no stone unturned, and you're going to give it your 100%. Yeah. How did you navigate that conversation with Gab, for example? Yeah, knowing that it's going to be a heavy lift.
I think it's important. It's important as well because our relationships weren't, fitness. Like they weren't into fitness to the same degree. Like sometimes you've got both. You're both competing.
Yeah.
But for us, it was like we were competing, and the partners were not in that world at all.
Yeah. So it's actually a really, really good topic because I was going to compete the year before the year I was getting married. And one of the things I see is that they don't have that conversation with their spouses ahead of time. Whereas I said to Gab, I was like, right, I want to compete. And this was the year we were getting married. And I told her what was going to happen, like saying no to food, I couldn't eat out, etc. And she said to me, she was like, well, I would prefer if you didn't do it on the year we were getting married, because obviously that would impact how I participate on the wedding.
Sure.
So having that conversation ahead of time, you can stress the expectations. And then she's like, okay, can you compete the following year? So we got married, honeymoon, and then I competed the following year because we knew what it was going to take. She knew what it was going to take. And she stressed that, okay, I'd kind of like it if you didn't do it on the year we were getting married, no wedding cake. Yeah. That's why Taylor demolished my wedding cake on the day instead. And then the following...
I obviously wasn't competing.
Yeah. And then the following year when I did compete, she was fully aware of what to expect. I told her what was going to happen, I said, I'm probably not going to have much sex drive either, to be honest. So, and then obviously, having that conversation ahead of time was one of the key things, which I think a lot of people fall short on because They don't communicate that.
Well, that was, I was going to say the main word is communication, that it was almost like an agreement that you made with Gab prior to even telling yourself, I'm going to compete. It's not that you're seeking permission, but you're looking for some compromise agreement there. Even if it's, hey, I'm going to compete for these few months, but then afterwards, we're going to go on a nice holiday, because I know you're having to sacrifice for this time as well. But I think if she was dead against it, you probably wouldn't have done it, because you don't wear the pants, that kind of thing. But I think you would have just been like, it's just going to be too hard just doing this thing myself and just every day dealing with the resistance. That it's going to make it a really unenjoyable experience. It's hard enough at the best of times, let alone if you're having to spend every day with someone that's dead against you doing something. It's like, I mean, how many relationships do you know have ended through bodybuilding and competing and stuff?
Often, just so often.
And also as well, it's something to consider that obviously bodybuilding is the extreme end.
But I like the examples on the extreme end, like you were saying.
You'll often find the examples. They'll come out at the very extremes, and then obviously they'll trickle down as it gets less. But I think you were spot on with it in terms of the communication. Like, you've got to set the expectations beforehand. I think it's important to explain to them why you're doing this, so they understand where your motive is. And then, because they're going on that journey with you, because it's going to impact their life as well. So now it's like, okay, well, are you willing to accept that for the next few months? And then I think what you said, Ben, was very important, of giving that light at the end of the tunnel as well, as in we've got to do it for this fixed period of time. And afterwards, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and we're going to celebrate with X, Y, and Z. So there's that, okay, I know for this fixed period, I need to just, help, support him through his goal, support her or him through his goals or through their goals. And then after that, then we're going to be able to celebrate together as well and do these nice things. So communication is definitely key.
Do you know one of the big things as well is that when the spouse is actually doing it and explaining why they're doing it, it's good. Although the other partner's going to feel like it's hindering them in the moment, one of the reasons why is that it's going to benefit them in the long run. They're going to be more productive, more energy, better spouse, better.
That's in a more normal diet and context.
In bodybuilding, definitely the opposite.
Because bodybuilding is a funny one where obviously a lot of people sign up to our program because they're in pain, and it's like, why do you want to do this? And the answers might be because I really don't like the way I look. I'm not a good role model for my kids. I don't feel attractive. I want to improve I've got health issues. So normally it's majority is pain driven with a little bit of, it would be nice to be in great shape and stuff. So there is some desire. Bodybuilding, you're not really in pain prior to bodybuilding. It's a purely, I don't even know how to explain it. It's because you don't win money. There's no prize to have for it, but it's almost like a challenge to yourself. Which, even though I don't like using the word suffering, because you're choosing to do it. There are people that genuinely suffer in the world, but it's actively putting yourself in discomfort for several months. With the idea that it's going to be pleasurable at the end. It's going to be worth it at the end when you get to step on stage or do whatever it is. Which is a really weird situation. But then also you could look at it like any competitor. The training is typically really, really hard for that. Like 400 meter sprinters, I always like to use, because their training is the hardest. It's all 90% of your training is in that lactic, I want to throw up style. And then only to run for less than 50 seconds after training for 4 years,
Depends who's running the 400 meters, isn't
it? For us, 3 minutes for us. I might have a break, have a Pop-Tart halfway around. But I think for people that don't compete, they can't comprehend that. So and that's why I think physique stuff and bodybuilding is very bizarre, because you're actively starving yourself to then put on orange paint and do it as essentially a beauty pageant. That's what it is. And I've done it. It's not like I'm shitting on everyone that wants to compete, because I still, I love the golden era of bodybuilding and stuff, but I also take it for what it is in that it's ridiculous. Like it's a subjective beauty pageant for men who abuse drugs. Like that's what it is. But I love the process of it, and like the training and the cardio and the diet and everything. And when you do compete, like you typically have a good time like on stage and stuff.
It's a nice celebration
But
of that.
I would never call myself an athlete for doing bodybuilding.
No, I don't call it a sport or an athlete,
you're an athletic mannequin. You know, typically you look like you could lift a bus, and you can't even lift your ass off the fucking sofa by the end of it.
You look your best, you feel your worst.
Yeah. It's a very strange endeavor.
That's like an extreme situation. But so when it comes to those conversations with your spouse, prior to you wanting to or starting to make the changes, it's really important just to have that initial conversation and be open and say, hey, I'm thinking of doing this thing. And I'm not talking about signing up to Supra. I'm talking about making just changes in general. Like, hey, I want to start walking more. Or, hey, like, I just want to
start a business. I want to, there's a load of different things.
It starts with the conversation, because to be honest, how your partner handles that conversation is going to be a massive green or red flag, regardless of how long you've been with that person. But if you say, hey, like, I'm thinking of starting a new business, and they immediately just shit on it without even hearing you out, it's like, do I want to be with someone that is not even going to entertain that question? Or if you say, hey, I want to like stop drinking as much. Yeah. And they're like, why? Like, why would you want to do that? Like, it's, like that's, alarm bells would be going off for me.
Yeah.
So
I've got this idea of better in myself. And it's got that reaction from you. Yeah. Whereas, like, if someone who legitimately cares about you unselfishly, they should never react like that. It should be, this is great that you're trying to better yourself. Let's hear about it in a bit more detail to see if it's viable.
Another red flag, like in that situation, and then if you tell your spouse, okay, this is how you can support me in this journey, and they still go on about it and they still sabotage you. That's a huge red flag.
And because a lot of times it's almost like, when the spouse starts something like this, it could potentially open Pandora's box in the relationship of the dynamic starts to change, and then the insecurities that have been there the whole time have started coming out a bit more. And then it's the passive aggressive comments of like, oh, why are you doing that? Or, then talking to friends, oh, he's doing his silly diet and stuff. And they don't realize that, like, all of those little things do impact the person. And from either side, I'm not just saying wives doing it to husbands. It goes both ways. Like you hear of stories of the wife trying to improve herself and the husband just fucking shitting on them constantly. Because I've had clients in the past where they've had conversations with me about things that their partner has said to them. And I'm not a therapist and I'm not a marriage counselor or anything, but I like, almost like verbal diarrhea. I was like, you need to get the fuck out like of that relationship. I was like, if any of your friends told you what you have just told me, what would your advice be to them? And they're like, I should leave this. And I was like, I will leave that with you and you can think on it. But because it really opens up a lot of things, but it can also, the amount of clients that we have that their relationships have drastically improved from doing this, where it's, their spouse has lost weight as a byproduct of them just being a bit more aware, or they've stopped going out to certain places on date nights and they're eating different foods, or they're going on their evening walks together. Maybe they started going to the gym together a couple times a week, and the number of messages that we'll get where it's like, hey, like my wife has dropped 20 pounds, like whilst I've dropped 40. She loves the way she looks. She's paying way more attention to what she eats.
Can't get her hands off each other.
Yeah, sex life has never been better. Oi, oi. Yeah. And so, like, all of these things, so it can go one of two ways, and I want to say more often than not, it goes the positive way.
Then it without that communication at the very start, it can go the other way, and I think there's part of it which is they don't like it because it's a reflection on themselves, and this is one that we see a lot, is because you generally, this is a very general statement, but you live a similar lifestyle to your partner. In sort of general, and then when you start to change yours, saying, and then you've signed up to Supra because you're out of shape and you want to get in shape, so your partner potentially may be out of shape as well, and then when they think, oh, well, if he now is going to change, going to be in shape, I'm going to need to change mine. And they may not want to change, or they may feel like that's a road that is going to be a difficult road that they're not willing to go down just yet. So then they start to try and pull you away from making that change. And I had this conversation with someone yesterday on a call, and I was like, sometimes you get to a point in your life where you realize even the closest people around you may not want what's best for you. Mm-hmm. And it's actually a really difficult realization to come to. And that's where you really realize the people who really do care about you and the people who potentially don't.
Yeah.
Or they do to an extent. Like one of the things, like from family, you would expect, if you've got good family, they will support you with whatever you want to do. Then when the further you move away, so like friends, for example, then you go to that next sort of level. That's where, and I've sort of noticed this as well, is your good friends are a bit like your family. They'll want what's best for you regardless. And then your other friends will want what's best for you until it's better than them. Then you'll see massive resistance, and it pops up. And it's something that I've noticed over the years as well. And it's a difficult thing to accept sometimes. And because you're like, oh my God, like, do certain people like me? Do they not? And then you get to the realization, I take it as a positive now when I get that resistance, because it's like, okay, this. If you are getting resistance, it tells you you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it was I'll just keep doing this then. It's just the way. It's almost the acceptance of that was challenging.
Yeah, the most common, very, very short conversation that I have with clients when it comes to their friends is they'll send me a check-in, and it'll be something along the lines of, it's just really hard when no one supports me. Mm-hmm. And then my first question is, have you asked for their support? And they go, no. And I said, so why the fuck would they just know why you're doing what you're doing and what you're doing and how they can support you? I was like, have you had a conversation? They're like, no. I'm like, right. So do you blame them then for not being able to read your mind? And he's like, no. Do you think it's worth having a conversation? Yeah.
Yes.
And then they have a real quick conversation of like, hey guys, I'm following this diet at the moment. You know, I'm trying to drop 20 pounds in X amount of weeks. Like, could really just use your support. You know, I'm going to be ordering different things when we go out to eat, stuff like that. You know, like, I know it's not what I typically behave like, but I'm trying to make a change. 99.9% of the time, your friends will go, sound, all good. Yeah, cool. Let us know how we can help.
They should.
Yeah. And that's the great way to filter your friends up.
Totally.
Because in the moment, if you just expect them to read your mind and support you when they don't know, like, that's on you. But if you have the conversation and then they continue not to support you after you've told them how they should support you, then that's your way to be like, do you really want to be hanging around with them?
Yeah. And there's obviously some nuance to it, because like, we rip each other constantly, but there is an underlying level of extreme support with whatever we're doing. You know, we might make some digs, but we know that they're in jest, and that's the friendship that we have. Yeah. But equally, if you said, hey, I'm for real now, I'm trying to do this thing, immediately me and Taylor would say, how can we help? Like, what do you need from us? And we'll 100%. Go, cool, done. And like, that's a good sign of some good friends. But again, you'll find as you go through this process, sometimes your friend groups will change, because even if they do support you, if they don't make those changes, or they're not growing or developing themselves, and you are eventually going to level up and leave them. And I don't want to say level up like as if you're better than them, but you're going to go left and they're going to go right.
It's just different, isn't it? You have different lifestyles. You enjoy different things. Just like some people enjoy, just sitting around and smoking weed and getting the munchies. And then suddenly now someone's changed their lifestyle and they enjoy feeling good and being fitter and improving their aerobic capacity and stuff. And it's like, oh, well, the two things that you both pursue are the opposite somewhat. So then the way you spend your time is different, and the conversations you have are different. So now it's like, well, what do we don't have this in common anymore.
Like we're saying, like Sunday, we're like, oh, if the weather's good, we'll go for a hike.
Yeah.
Because that's we both enjoy that. It's like, cool, crack, get some steps in.
Yeah.
We're not being lazy. Where if you said, do you fancy coming down the pub on Sunday afternoon for a few pints? I would go, no. Like, why would I want to do that? But if that's all that you offered and that's all you wanted to do, then our friendship would probably start to go, because I'd be like, we like doing different things. And I'm not saying one's better than the other, but you probably want to find some guys that like drinking on Sunday afternoon, and I'll go join a fucking hiking club. But there's going to be a point where because we've spoke about this in a previous podcast, where you keep doing the same things, even though they're inhibiting you from making progress. And your friend group is a large component of that, where if you feel obliged to do this thing like drinks on a Sunday or, dinner out on a Friday or whatever, because that's what you've always done with your friends group, and if you stop doing it, you're worried that you're going to lose those friends, then you need to ask yourself the question, well, am I only friends with them because we do this thing on a Friday, or are we actually friends? And if you say, well, no, it's just because we do this thing on a Friday, could you find some other friends to go to the gym with you on Friday instead? It seems like it's quite shallow then at that point. Whereas if you say, no, we've been friends for years, we only just started doing this recently, cool. Then you can have that conversation and change it. But you'll find, because we typically work with people for 1 to 3 years, you see massive shifts in their, typically they're going to change friendship group, potentially a relationship, career, or they're going to, get promoted or go a different direction. Like, there's going to be so many changes in those 3 years that you see someone go through. And we've seen it so many times now that we wouldn't go, oh, fucking hell, they broke up and he's got a new job. It's like standard. Like it's very, very common as you go through this, because it's like you just go through like a rapid growth phase in your personal life as well as your fitness.
But the shifts in identity are huge as well. And you start to identify with a different group of people. You start to identify. So again, it's like, if you, again, in this context, you become fitter, you now identify as a fit individual. You don't identify as a pub man or whatever.
Landlord.
And then
pub landlord.
Yeah, okay, pub landlord. A pub man, is it? and then you, in order to sort of reinforce that identity that you have, you tend to spend time with people who share a similar identity as well, and then that sort of reinforces it, and it sort of satisfies that identity that you have, and the other one doesn't. It sort of goes against your identity, and so it makes you feel different type thing. So you just naturally, like, as your own identity changes, your social identity changes, and then that reinforces your identity, which becomes more powerful, and then you shift away from that other one, and it's a thing that will naturally happen sometimes without even thinking about it. You realize you start to enjoy conversations with different types of people, and you start to get on with certain types of people, and you start to not get on with other types of people as well. And you be like, oh, but actually, we just, like, what the fuck are we going to talk about?
Yeah.
Natural is a really good word, because if you identify as a fit person, that fit person isn't going to be going to the pub anymore with the pub landlord. He's going to be going into the gym. You're naturally going to have different conversations with, like, make new friends in gyms. You'll be going out with them, train on a Friday, chest on a Monday. And, like, you're not going to be going in that environment with, like, the pubs and seeing all those people. You know?
I mean, the whole idea of, like, this resistance thing, I think you can really break it down to, Are you being who you want to be? And you are under no obligation to be who you were yesterday. You can change anytime you want. Obviously, that, if you drastically change, then other people may react a certain way, and you have to accept that. That's not their fault.
No.
They're well entitled to change the way they view you. But I think a lot of people never truly are themselves, and they're always just a version that they've kind of created for people around them, especially in relationships and stuff as well. And it's like, how long is that going to last till you're just fucking exhausted of trying to be this person who you really don't want to be? Like, whether it's like, oh, I'm tired of just my weeks being going down the pub on a Friday, Groundhog Week every week. I want to do something else, but I don't want to have that conversation with my spouse or my friends and stuff. So I'm just going to keep living this lie or kind of and being miserable, because
Talk about a one-way system to like
totally
to being unhappy.
Yeah.
Just living this life and for other people and not satisfying your own needs.
It's such a, because I mean I'm still learning this now, but like, because I used to always be very, I would never want someone to not like me. Like when I was at college, if I was at school, like I would want to be able to go into all the different groups and like not like, I guess like fit in, where like, you know, if my name popped up, it's like, oh yeah, he's cool. Like if someone goes, oh, Ben's a dick, I'd be like, what? Like,
why?
I must figure out why and befriend this person and change their mind. And it would like, I would want to get validated from everyone. And it's probably been a very, very gradual thing. Whereas now it's gone very, I will be exactly who I want to be. And I will attract the people that like that, and I will repel the ones that don't. And that's my litmus test for who I keep around. By just being myself, I'm going to push away people that think I'm an asshole, and attract the people that don't.
It's really handy.
It's
really handy.
But,
the filter's phenomenal.
But you have to, like, the price of that is that you have to accept being disliked by people. And that's okay.
And willing to let go of people. That like you don't, if you've had a relationship with someone for a long time, it's like, I don't want to leave that go. I don't want it to go away. But if you really want to make a change, there are things you're going to have to leave go. Sometimes that's behaviors you have. Sometimes that's a mental sort of thought process that you have. Sometimes it's relationships around you. Like you have to, in order to make changes, you have to leave go of certain things. And sometimes that is relationships that is tough to leave go. But once you've let it go, you'll be in a much, much better position.
Yeah.
With relationships as well, particularly, like some people will just stay in it just because of the length of time. And it's like, is that really a good reason to stay in it? It's like, whereas like you can reframe it and say, it just took you this long to realize that this is not the relationship for you.
Totally. It's
well, the relationship's run its course,
Oh,
and
yeah.
now the return on investment of this relationship is quite poor.
well, it's when we talk about habits, when we spoke the other week, when people say, well, it's just what we've always done. That's not valid.
It's not a valid reason.
That's not a valid reason. There's you haven't given me any pros of it other than, well, we've just always done it that way. And you see that all the time with even like boxing coaches or like old school football coaches. It's like, why are you doing this like archaic method? It's like, it's what we've always done. And and you're like, you're stuck to your tradition and afraid to break tradition for the sake of what? Like tradition.
Yeah.
And like the UK is notorious for it, like the royal family. You know, like gold chariots and shit, and there's holes in the road. And it's like, well, it's tradition. It's a fucking waste of time, is what it is.
Yeah.
It's shambles.
Like, does it still serve the purpose? Because if it doesn't, let's
Why
move
are we
on.
doing it?
Let's continue on and be better moving forward.
Yep.
And like rather than just keep doing the same thing when the return on that investment has completely dropped off.
Yeah. So, oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say is that it's like that thing where people keep doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome. You know, it's like, well, if you want the outcome to change, you're probably going to have to change something.
So when it comes to, because I always, when we do our coach calls with our clients as well on Thursdays, just bonus if you want to sign up to Superhuman and get to see our faces every week. We always like to look at things in the practical terms. So it's all good and well saying like, you need to have these conversations, you need to do this. It's like, how? How do I have this conversation? What verbiage do I use with my spouse in order to make this a productive conversation? Because, you know, no, when someone's going to listen to this being like, oh, I need to talk to my spouse, and they just suddenly go, bitch, I'm on a diet. And it's like, that ain't a conversation. That was a statement. So
Just tell
we eat broccoli now. Yeah. So like, how do you have that conversation? What do you think the key talking points need to be? I know, Ryan, you touched on them in terms of like how they can support you and stuff, but like, so how would you kind of layer and structure this conversation to have with a spouse?
So you're looking for a reenactment here.
Yeah.
Do you want me to be the woman, me to be the wife, you to be the husband.
I'm eating chicken broccoli now, bitch.
I'm going to be an IFBB pro, bitch.
Well, I definitely just would make a statement and tell her that. Like, I would, like, when in these situations, I would literally just say, ask her for her thoughts on me making these changes. Explain what the process involves, explain the benefits of it, explains what it means to her, like what potentially is going to happen initially, but the benefits that she will get in the long term as well. And ask her for her thoughts, her opinion back, because she may have some objections to it. And then you can come up with a compromise where you both win.
Yeah.
You know, that's essentially how I would go about it. So lay out the plan, like what I intend on doing, not what I'm going to do initially. So obviously you just tell me you're going to do it.
It could be so easy when you frame it like that. They're like one, and this goes either way. Like I know we're using the, husband having a conversation with a wife, but it can go both ways. But just asking for their thoughts, you're already including them in the process. So you're basically saying, I'm not making this decision without you. I want you to be involved in this. Please ask me questions, and I want to hear your thoughts. Because then it may be, they say, well, my first thought is like, how are we going to do date night? And then you can say, totally understand. We can still do date night. I might be ordering slightly different foods when we go out. And maybe I don't drink wine every time, but we will still do date night. We're still going to have quality time together. Yeah. Oh, cool. Cool. Tick that one off. How is dinner time going to be different going forward? Okay, well, sometimes depending on what you're cooking, I might be able to work it into my plan. Other times I might already just have my pre-prep food, but we're still going to sit down together. Just like if we were at a restaurant ordering different things, our plates might look a bit different, but we're still going to have quality dinner time with the family. And so you're like all of those things that they might be thinking about that they're not going to be able to do anymore, you are going to be able to do them just slightly differently, and you're just compromising with it. And then they might go, well, okay, but can we still do like a proper date night, maybe once a month, where we both eat the same food because that's something that we enjoy? And you go, absolutely. And so it's cool. We're not going to do it every week, but maybe once a month. And hey, how about this? Once I reach my weight loss goal, we do a weekend getaway, or we celebrate and do this, because it's like, like now I've got reward for supporting you for doing this thing. Like I get something in return as well.
I think that's one that I like as well, is because they are involved. It's not like you're going on the journey and they've just got to watch you. Like what you're doing will impact them. So then celebrating that together is very important. That's one that I like. So like your payment for supporting me here is going to be this at the end. I do quite like that added element to it. It's good.
And like often we see the people don't have these conversations, and then the spouse will not be open and honest, and they'll come out in like passive aggressive ways. What you're doing by asking for the spouse, for the partner's thoughts, is they are going to share all the objections to doing this thing, even though they know that you've laid out what to expect, the benefits. They'll say, okay, well, we can't do date night anymore. Whereas if you don't have that conversation initially, it's going to come out in passive aggressive ways. Oh God, I can't even have this ice cream.
We never go out anymore.
Yeah, we never go out anymore. That's a great one. But you've already addressed that initially. So like the perceived roadblocks that you're going to get throughout the journey, you just
and you make sure that it's an ongoing dialogue as well. So it's not just we're going to have this one conversation and then we're going to go, because you might get 4 weeks in and then they go, hey, like I'm all for it. You're making great progress. Like I'm just feeling a little bit lonely because you're out walking all the time and going to the gym. Like, and I feel like we're not spending as much time together. And you could say, can we go on some walks together? Or can we do this other thing? And like, or you even make a compromise and say, well, I'm going to reshuffle when I train so we can do this thing. But again, if you're not made aware, you're going to assume everything's hunky dory. And then even though there's resentment brewing, and then it's gonna snap at one point. So it has to be, just like you have a weekly check-in with your coach, you touch base with your spouse and be like, is it like, how do you feel me doing this? Like, is it going well? Is there anything that we can change or improve? And I think the clients that actually have those, they just have really good relationships even prior to working with us. They've almost, a lot of them have already done this ahead of time because they probably had other hardships and stuff they've had to go through in their relationship. But for the ones that haven't, because this sounds like a no shit kind of podcast, but the amount of time, the only reason we're saying it is because we have the data to back it up. The amount of times we have
time and time
clients
again,
that don't feel supported when they've never asked for support or they've never had the conversation with their spouse, and sometimes they go, oh no, like we don't talk about stuff like that. It's like, well, what do you talk about in your you need to assess your relationship then.
Yeah,
because what other stuff are you not talking about?
Yeah.
And
The reassurance is a huge one, because the initial conversation, like even some of the strategies you may put in place may not work. So having like that, just like we have a weekly check-in, like, oh, I'm not really feeling like going for a walk. Can we go to the cinema instead? So like things has to like evolve week on week. Like what things went well, what's not going so well, what can we change?
I think from a practical setting, or giving it a practical example, is, so again, we've got this photo shoot coming up now in June, so we're in a sort of mini sort of prep phase whereby we've got to tighten things up. So my lifestyle over the past couple of months has been different to what it usually is. And on a Sunday, quite often, me and Jess, we do, it sounds quite sad actually, now I'm saying it out loud, but we go to a coffee shop, we play cards, and we normally have a coffee and a cake.
yeah.
So it's like, and that coffee cake, I'll normally have a strawberry flat white latte. No, it's I'll normally have like a flat white and a cake, and then she'll have a coffee and a cake as well. We play some cards. Now that's something that we do almost like routinely most weekends, and then suddenly that doesn't fit with what I have to do right now.
Yeah.
So okay, well now recently we've been playing badminton on a Sunday. So it's like it's just
even worse.
Yeah, I know. What am I doing? It's like, so we're still having fun together, and we're still like, look at the similarities. Well, one, we're spending time together. Two, there's an element of competition in there somewhere. It's like the different, and we both like that type of stuff. The difference is one of them is sitting down consuming, so isn't really that supportive of what we do, of what I'm trying to do. And the other one is more active, and we're learning some skills and stuff, so it is a bit more supportive of what we're trying to do. And that's it. And it's like we've looked at the activities that make our relationship good, and we've got, okay, how can we tweak those so they still remain intact, but still they're not going to take away from what I'm trying to do in my own personal endeavors as well.
It's like you've realized what the purpose is of you two meeting up, like having fun together, good conversations. Whereas like you can do that without stuffing your face with cake.
Yeah.
So
and it also goes into just the sustainability of your plan. Like we all know, when you get to the back end of a diet, you are more restricted, and maybe you do go for coffee and cake, but you don't have a cake. You got a black coffee instead. And so it's little things like that where some things you really can't work in because it's just not feasible at that kind of point in the phase that you're in. But you also need to look at it like, can I sustainably do something like this forever in this relationship? Because if your spouse is going, well, how long is this going to last? Because in your head you're going, forever, but like to some extent. And so if you can't find those compromises or happy mediums, then again, it's like you need to have those conversations.
Yeah.
Because if it's like, well, when you finish this diet, are we going to go down the pub on Sundays again? And you're going to go, well, I'm probably not going to want to. Like after you spent 4 months transforming yourself, the idea of having 5 pints on a Sunday just isn't appealing anymore.
Yeah.
But then your spouse has been waiting for that 16 weeks to be up, so then you can go back to who you were, and it's like, no, I'm never going back.
Yeah.
Then again, that's another hard conversation that you need to have, and say, is that person waiting for the old me to return, or are they going to accept the new me? And
that's where there's that slight difference between like those short-term goals that you might have, which you need to push things a little bit harder. They're a little bit more black and white, and they're a little bit, the restrictions that you put on yourself might have to be a little bit tighter. But then there's also the lifestyle side of it, where you're more in that gray area where, oh no, this is just the lifestyle that I live in general, and that might not be as extreme as sometimes when you're in the black and white, but it's like I've changed now. I don't live that old life. Like I'm never going back to that lifestyle. Yeah. And there's two slightly different approaches. One of them is more like a general day-to-day lifestyle, and then the other one is more fixed term changes. And it's those are the things that you have to identify and have to communicate about, and to make sure that you're both on the same wavelength.
I think we've probably all three of us now, we're pretty good at, and I think it's probably come through practice. I mean, I think Ryan, you've probably always been like it, where you kind of, what you like, what you don't like. And there's a limit to what you're going to do in terms of things that you don't want to do. Like you're just going to start saying no. Whereas a lot of people, they're yes man. It's all like, do you want to go on a rave on Saturday? And it's like, I fucking hate raves. But like, oh, my friends are going to go, so I don't want to be left out. I'm going to get FOMO. Whereas I would go, fuck no. Like, that sounds terrible. I would rather binge a series on Netflix, like on my own.
I think that comes with age as well.
Totally.
You get more comfortable with who you are.
But I think a lot of people, like that FOMO, that fear of missing out, ends up sabotaging them from their goals, even when they don't really want to do the thing in the first place. Whereas I think we all know there's shit that you have to do that you don't really want to do a lot of times. Like, you know, maybe you got to go watch your kids play sports every Saturday, and it's just, you know, by the 12th week, you're just like, I really don't want to be sat on this cold football pitch watching my kid miss a football every 5 minutes. Like, it's getting a bit annoying now. But you still do it anyway. But then I think there's a limit where you're just like, no. Like, no, I don't, like, that's not what I'm into. I don't enjoy that. Like, you'll have a worse time if I'm there because I'm not going to enjoy it. And so I would just say, no, like, that's not my thing. And then eventually people will stop asking you to do those things because they just like, what is he going to say? No, it's like, I know.
Yeah.
And I'll do the things that I want to do. And because eventually either those people will never want to hang out with you again because you never want to do the things that they want to do, but you will find people that like doing what you like doing. Like, for example, like if you said, do you want to go for a coffee on Sunday and play some cards? I'd be like, absolutely. Like, that sounds great. Yeah. And then you have other people that go like, no, like that sounds terrible.
What, play cards? Yeah. What are you, 90?
Yeah. So it's like, but you'll repel the people that don't like those activities and attract the ones that do. And then the end result is you get to do more of the stuff that you like to do with people that you are probably going to like more because they like to do that shit as well.
Yeah.
So I think like
it's a bit like tomorrow now. Me and you are going to train tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it's like you asking me to train, or like you asking me to train is like, oh, fantastic. Yeah. I would love to go train. Like Jen, the idea of like having a social pump is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I know know other people who I spend time with. If I went, mate, do you want to go train?
They're like, wait,
what the fuck are you talking about? Get the fuck out of here. Stop talking to me like that. And it's bizarre, isn't it?
But that was it, because I think when we were talking on Wednesday and I said, oh, what are you training on Friday? And you were like, I've got push. And I went,
yeah,
me too.
Oh, here you go. Here you go. So to me, that was like a night out. And it was almost like it was a similar thing to other people that would be like, fancy going to watch the rugby on Saturday.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, that'd be amazing.
Yeah,
it's the exact same.
Go train and then go get brunch.
Yeah.
That's a dream.
Like,
that's a dream Friday.
Do the stuff you love to do with people you like to do it with. Keep to be happy.
Yeah.
And the sooner you work out who you are and what you want, you'll start to filter out the people around you who support that, and you'll have a much, much better time in the long run as well.
But I think conclusion will be, if you haven't had the conversations, have them. Ask for their feedback, ask for their thoughts, compromise. It's not your way or the highway. You know, make a compromise. If it means that much to you, or that person or those friends mean that much to you, then compromise. But just have the conversation prior. And if you've already started and you haven't had the conversation, have it now. And continually keep that conversation open throughout, and it's going to make it's going to drastically drop the resistance of what you're doing. Doesn't mean it's going to get rid of it, because there's always going to be, there might be work colleagues that you just cannot avoid that are going to sabotage you or whatever. But our goal should be to minimize the resistance as much as possible. Yeah. So like we say, it's not about putting your foot down harder on the accelerator. It's about taking your foot off the brake. And so it's look at all the things that are slowing you down and trying to remove that resistance. And inevitably you're going to go faster. But trying harder sometimes isn't the way. It's just removing the barriers. Awesome. Well, thank you for tuning in, guys. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, comment 5 stars on iTunes. And we'll see you next time.
If you love this show, please like, share, and leave us a 5-star review so that we can help more people. I'm John Madsen, Superhuman CEO, reminding you to always go get what's yours.